Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, classmate. Me and my co-reporting, we're going to present our topic, which is neoclassical art by the Guzman and Fabi.
Neoclassical art, originating in 1760s, was a significant movement in painting and visual arts, focusing on austere design and classical themes. It aimed for harmony, clarity, restraint, universality, and idealism inspired by ancient Greek and Roman art. Neoclassical arts preferred specific qualities such as line over color, straight, lines over curves, and general over particular.
Neoclassicism emerges as a reaction to the Rococo style dominating European art from the 1720s. It was fueled by new archaeological discoveries such as the excavation of Herculaneum and Pompeii in influential application. These discoveries allowed European scholars to distinguish chronological period in Greco-Roman art, replacing Roman generation and encouraging interest in Greek. German scholar John Joachim writes and theorizing were influential in this regard, as he believed that imitating Greek art will result and idealize the depiction of natural forms with universal and archetypical significance.
There's a style we called Rococo, style in interior design, the decorated arts, painting, architecture, and sculpture that originated in Paris in the early 18th century but was soon adopted throughout France and later in other countries, principally Germany and Austria. It is characterized by lightness, elegance, and an exuberant use of curving natural forms in ornamentation. The word rococo is derived from the French word rocaille, which denoted the shell-covered rock work that was used to decorate artificial grottos.
Let me introduce to you the four artists here in neoclassical art.
Giovanni Battista Piranesi was an Italian draftsman, printmaker, architect, and art tourist. His large prints depicting the buildings of classical and post-classical Rome and its vicinity contribute considerably to Rome's fame and to growth of classical archaeology and to the neoclassical movement in art.
Here's artwork of Giovanni Battista, Levido di Rome by 1747. Piranesi had begun work on the Veduta di Rome and he contributed to create plates for this series until he died in 1778.
Louis David, born August 30, 1748, Paris, France, died December 29, 1825, was the most celebrated French artist of this day and a principal exponent of the late 18th century reaction against the Rococo style. David won wide acclaim with the huge canvases of a classical theme. When the French Revolution began in 1789, he served briefly as its artistic director, and painted its leader and martyrs in a style that is more realistic than a classical. Later, he was appointed partner to Napoleon.
Here's the example of Jacques-Louis David. The first one is The Death of Marat, oil painting in 1793, and Napoleon Crossing the Alps, oil painting then in 1801.
Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres was a painter and icon of cultural conservatism in 19th century France. Ingres became the principal proponent of French neoclassical painting after the death of his mentor, Jacques-Louis David. His cool, meticulously drawn works constituted the stylistic antithesis of the emotionalism and colorism of the contemporary Romantic school.
Here's La Grande Odaliscism painting by Ingres.
Angelica Guzman was one of the most celebrated artists of the 18th century in this major exhibition, which traced her trajectory from child prodigy to the one of Europe's most painters. Known for her celebrity portraits and pioneer history paintings, Angelica helped to shape the direction of European art. She painted some of the most influential figures of her day, queens, countesses, actors, and socialities. And she the genre of history painting by focusing largely of female protagonists from classical history and mythology.
Here's the artwork of Angelica Guzman, The Sorrow of Telemachus. Thank you for your cooperation, but before we end this video, we would like to invite you to watch this short video clip that related in neoclassical art.
The neoclassical art period reached its height in the late 18th and early 19th century. Born in Rome and spreading throughout Europe and the United States, this movement was a return to ancient Greek and Roman art characteristics and ideals. Neoclassical art was to portray the ideas of simplicity, reason, order, virtue, and civilized society. By the end of this video, you'll learn about 4 important things that led to the neoclassical art period, as well as the main characteristics of art during this time. For more videos that help you learn, experience, and enjoy art history, make sure you click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon off to the side, where you'll be notified when I release new videos each week. As I've taught my students and learned about neoclassicism through my studies, I've come to realize there are 4 main things that led to the neoclassical art movement. I tried to narrow my list down to just 3, but I couldn't leave any of these out. 1. A pushback on the Baroque and Rococo art movements. 2. The writings of Johann Joachim Winckelmann. 3. The excavations of Pompeii and Herculaneum in Italy. And 4. The 18th century Age of Enlightenment. The 2 preceding art movements to neoclassicism are Baroque and Rococo. The Baroque art movement lasted approximately 150 years, from 1600 to 1750, and was full of drama, emotion, and tension. The Rococo, or late Baroque art movement, started in the early 1700s and lasted until the mid to late 1700s. Rococo built off of Baroque, but had a more fun, sensual, and frivolous nature to it. Rococo also turned its attention away from the church and Christian themes, becoming more hedonistic in a way. For more on Rococo, you can watch my video that covers this movement in more depth. The neoclassical art movement follows Rococo in the late 1700s. In many ways, it was a pushback to the gaudy, frivolous, and over-the-top nature of Baroque and Rococo. Some of the leading figures to neoclassicism actually fought against the leaders of Rococo, the French aristocracy. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning, neoclassicism is full of simplicity, reason, and a return to order and virtue. You can't talk about the neoclassical art movement without mentioning the writings of Johann Joachim Winckelmann, who was a German art historian and archaeologist. In fact, many people believe he was the father of art history, so thanks, Winckelmann. His writings from the mid-1700s were a deep dive into the ideals of Roman and Greek art. He believed that art should aim for noble simplicity and calm grandeur, and that the only way for us to become great is to imitate the ancients. These writings had a huge impact on our return to Greek and Roman ideals, especially in art, and to the simplicity of the neoclassical art movement. In the mid-1730s and 40s, the real excavations of the ancient cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum began. These excavations included the discovery of Roman art and architecture, and revived the study of Greek and Roman art. In fact, Rome was a major stop for the Grand Tour, which was a traditional trip taken by European upperclassmen once they reached the age of 21. This stop on the Grand Tour helped spread neoclassicism from Rome to other parts of Europe. Finally, the neoclassical art period coincided with the 18th century Age of Enlightenment. This philosophical movement valued science and reason, and helped drive the Industrial Revolution. The ideals of individual liberty, religious tolerance, and constitutional governments were pushed. And so neoclassical artists, inspired by these ideas, portrayed art that was civilized, reasonable, and contributed to a more orderly society. With the background of these 4 things that led up to the neoclassical movement, it's a little bit easier to understand the art and architecture styles of this time period. As well as everything else already mentioned, the characteristics of art during this time were serious, symmetrical, orderly, virtuous, and heroic. The art often depicted characteristics from classical history, as well as political, philosophical, and religious leaders that were important to the time. And the architecture became more simple, less ornate than Baroque and Rococo architecture. Although some may find neoclassical art boring, I think you can find a lot of beauty in the classic nature of the Roman and Greek art characteristics that were used in the neoclassical time period. But if you missed some of that drama, there were some artists that were able to bring the intensity and drama back into painting, just in a more simple fashion. I love Jacques-Louis David's paintings during the apex of neoclassicism. Leader of the movement in France, his art was simple, yet dramatic and captivating. His artwork eventually became an